Colleagues, welcome. It's good to see you all here. Today we have a presentation given by Professor Raymond Frempong, and the title of his presentation is How Do Current and Past Mining Activities Affect Water Security, Health and Economic Opportunities? I'll be presenting Raymond shortly, and after my presentation, after my introduction, he will kick off with his presentation. Raymond is a professor in development economics at the European School of Political and Social Science in Lille, France. He studied economics at the University of Cape Coast and PhD at the University of Bayreuth in Germany. His research interests are development economics, health economics, the economics of child labor, agricultural economics, and broadly environmental economics, including energy and resource economics. He has published in several journals, including Energy Economics, Development Policy Review, Journal of Development Studies, Nature Communication, World Development, etc. Raymond's research has been funded by grants from several organizations and institutions. He previously worked as a postdoctoral researcher at the Chair of Development Economics at the University of Bayreuth with Professor David Stadelman. Raymond, the floor is yours. You are welcome to kick off with the presentation.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Djiby, for the invitation and, of course, for the opportunity to talk about our paper. And, of course, I want to thank everyone for the time they've taken to be here. So basically, I will be discussing our old paper, how do current and past mining activities affect water security, health, and economic opportunities in basically sub-Saharan Africa. Of course, this is a joint paper with you and Professor Stadelman, right? So I would try to motivate the paper a little bit with an introduction. Of course, it's an obvious fact to most of us that many people in sub-Saharan Africa especially face several deprivations, notably poverty, food insecurity, and of course, water insecurity. So the current estimate put it around 1 in 3 Africans facing one form of water insecurity or the other. And of course, those of us in Cape Town do not need me to remind you of the infamous water crisis between 2015 and 2020, right? And unfortunately, we should expect the situation to worsen in the coming years, basically due to climate change, right? And the problem or the issue that we in sub-Saharan Africa have is the peculiarity of our economies that tends to depend or rely heavily on resource extraction. And as we know, this industry is also water dependent and therefore has a very strong connection with both surface and groundwater. So what this simply means is that we should expect a lot of competition for water between domestic use and industrial use, especially for mining activities and essential mining operations. As I said, this competition could worsen or is likely to worsen because of climate change. But we should also kind of have an eye on the activities of small-scale miners, small-scale illegal miners whose activities are largely unregulated and also undocumented, such that they kind of conduct their activities in a way that adversely affects the environment, but unfortunately authorities are not able to track them and therefore monitor what they do and ensure that environmental sustainability is adhered to and therefore water quality is also maintained. So these are some of the issues confronting sub-Saharan African countries, especially in recent years when it comes to water security. And of course, we have to tie this with the mining industry. Right. So, well, it's not always gloomy when it comes to the issue of the mining industry, such that you would always expect people who are close to mining activities to have adverse outcomes. So we have, of course, challenges, but there are opportunities also for issues of water, sanitation, and hygiene when it comes to mining, right? And the first thing is that in some communities, actually, we observe improved water quality, especially if this is being provided by the mining corporations or the firms. And then obviously you would also have direct and indirect employment and therefore opportunities for people to earn better livelihood and also get some income that would improve their health, water, and food outcomes. And then, as I said, if mining corporations or companies are being responsible and discharging their corporate social responsibilities, then sometimes they provide corporate social projects, pipeline water, hospitals, roads, schools, and some other general community infrastructures that may better the welfare outcomes of people in their catchment areas. So empirically, what we tend to observe is that, of course, the effect of mining activities tend to be mixed. There are some studies that have documented water pollution effects of the industry in developing countries, basically. And then there are some other studies that, of course, as I mentioned, tend to show that there's some positive reducing unemployment effects of these mining activities. So what we seek to do in this paper is to try to understand why these heterogeneous effects across and within countries. And of course, sometimes also it's not even just within countries and across countries, but even intertemporal effect tends to change. So Diallo, for example, documents that in Guinea, when bauxite mines were active, you tend to have better livelihood outcomes for the people in the area, but at the time when they close down, you tend to have livelihood worsening. And of course, I had the opportunity to observe this firsthand in Ghana when I was growing up around the diamond mines in Akwetia. Of course, in the 90s, late 90s, this used to be a very vibrant town, but now if you go to Akwetia, it's almost a dead town because the Ghana Diamond Consolidated Limited is no more in operation. So these are the issues that we would want to explain, and our focus here in this paper, Djiby, was to look at how the quality of local governance would explain some of these observed heterogeneities. So what we explained or we examined is the effect of mining or mining activities on water security, one, and then we also look at the moderating effect of local governments in the mining water nexus. So I would directly move to the methods that we employed and provide some of the results, and then maybe I open the floor for discussions. So in this study, we actually employed a micro-level study. So generally, we would use the Afrobarometer data sets around 2 to 6, and this provide a very rich source of variables and information, as most of us know, that helps us to understand the issues that we want to examine. So the the lived livelihood section of the Afrobarometer dataset contains several interesting questions when it comes to WASH. And so we select 3 of these variables, which looks at whether the household has gone without adequate water in the past 1 year, whether it has gone without adequate medication or medicine, and income. So in each case, households were asked to indicate the frequency of these deprivations. So what we do here is to contract 3 dummy variables or 3 indicator variables that tells us whether the household, for instance, has gone without adequate water at least once in the past year. We do same for the other 2 variables, and we therefore use these indicators as our main dependent variables of interest. The quality of local governance, again, is also constructed from the Afrobarometer dataset. So we look at corruption of local government officials, to what extent do the respondents, or what extent does the respondent agree that local government officials are corrupt, local tax officials are corrupt, or to what extent they approve of local government. So we construct kind of an indicator variable, not an indicator variable, but an average variable for these indicators for administrative 2 level for each respondent, and this usually will range from 1 to 4. Then we kind of merge the Afrobarometer respondent based on the geolocation variable that is provided by the Afrobarometer dataset to the Africa Power Mine dataset, which we obtained from the World Bank. And this dataset actually provides us with some mine level information. Of course, these are commercial mines, registered commercial mines that are documented, so we know the geolocation of these mines. So what we do is try to construct 2 or 3 variables, if I may, or even 4 variables from this data set. So the first one is to count the number of mines around the households, 50-kilometer radius, and then the number of mines, 50 to 100-kilometer radius of the household. Then we are also able to count the number of active and inactive mines within these 2 radar. So these are the variables that we use to measure our proximity of the household to the mining activities. And then we basically employed an OLS to these dependent variables. Of course, there are issues with endogeneity, and therefore we try to obtain mineral deposits as documented by the US Geological Survey. So again, we know where these mineral deposits are, and it also counts with geolocation, so we are able to kind of count how many deposits are within the proximity of the household, and we would use this as our instrumental variable. So I show some results, and then, as I said, the floor will be open for questions. Right, so the first table here would be us looking at how the number of mines within the locations or proximity of the households affects the 3 variables that we indicated earlier on. So what we see here, especially regarding water access or access to water, is that households that have an additional mine within the 50-kilometer radius, actually the probability of them going without water in the past 1 year decreases by about 3.6 percentage points. Then you also realize that as you go further, then the effect becomes positive, meaning that the household is likely to go without adequate water. Now, we try to understand why this is, and we frame that answer within the realities of mining activities. As I indicated earlier on, sometimes these mining activities would provide potable water as long as they are in operation to these communities. So what we are seeing here could be that effect, and therefore we would expect mining activities taking care of communities within their catchment area. However, the spillover effect in terms of pollution is likely to affect households that are in distant areas, but for example, have river or their groundwater taking their source from these mining activities. So this could potentially explain why we see this effect. Again, we realize that going without medication has some negative association with having a lot of mines or one additional mine in a 50-kilometer radius. My interpretation or our interpretation for the water seems a bit consistent with what we observe with income, right? So again, we don't see any effect here for the 50-kilometer radius, but we tend to have lower poverty or income poverty when it comes to having mines in 50 to 100-kilometer radius or in a distance area. And this is basically because in these areas, then you might want to have people actually engaging in illegal activities or small-scale mining that could enhance local economies. Right. So here we try to look at the effect of active, inactive mines. Again, active mines tend to consistently reduce deprivations and water insecurity, for instance, but as the mines go inactive, then you tend to have no effect basically when it comes to water and medication, but income, yes, still people are able to do small-scale mining, even though these commercial mines may be gone. Local individuals are able to do small-scale mining and get some income from their activities, and therefore poverty tends to reduce among these communities or individuals within this area. So what we do, again, is to look at the effect of this corruption and local government variables and how they impact on water and medication and, of course, income, right? So what we realize here is that as the number or as the quality of corruption, as the level of corruption increases, right, in the local level, then you tend to see a lot of water insecurity, poor access to medicine or medication, and of course income, especially also income poverty increases, but of course we tend to have some reduction in income poverty when it comes to people disapproving of local governments. What we are doing here is to look at the marginal effects or the interaction of water quality, the interaction of corruption and mining activities. So here we have at the top panels, we are interacting corruption, local councillor corruption with active mines. And then at the bottom, we are interacting the same variable with inactive mines. So we only do this for one of our governance variable, and the others we provide in the appendix of the paper. So generally what we see is that the effects tend to decrease when corruption is higher, right? So corruption and quality of local governance tends to affect the marginal effect or the importance of active mines and also inactive mines. The effect worsens, for example, in terms of inactive mines when corruption is higher, and then it improves when corruption is lower. So basically what we find is that, well, when people live by or have mines nearby, then it improves water security. Closed or distant mines tend to worsen water security. And as I said, one explanation would be the fact that these mines or corporations are taking care of communities and individuals within their catchment area, but however, they are not able to provide same services potentially for people in distant areas. Right, local governance also tend to matter a bit, and of course, infrastructure associated with water security should be improved, as we have said. Right, good. So thank you very much, Djiby, and I'm happy to answer questions if there are any.
Thank you. Thank you, Raymond. That was a very succinct and insightful presentation.